Mirembe was the firstborn, and that meant everything. She cooked, cleaned, raised her siblings, and buried her dreams so her family could survive. Then one morning, a letter arrived. It had her name on it, and a decision that could change everything. But could she really walk away? Mirembe's hands had known the weight of adulthood long before her voice had deepened or her dreams had formed. At 16, she knew how to balance a bundle of firewood on her head, scrub school uniforms against a stone by the river, and silence her own hunger when the littler ones needed second helpings. Her village in western Tanzania called her Binti wa Kwanza, the first daughter. But to her family, she was more than that. She was the spine. Her father, once a fisherman on Lake Victoria, had died when she was just 9. Since then, the family's thread had stretched thin but hadn't broken, mostly because Mirembe tied the knots that held it together. Mama Halima, worn by years of grief and grinding maize, leaned on Mirembe like a crutch. The younger siblings, Baraka, Twin City, and Sauda, and little Achieng, looked at her the way ducklings follow the first one into water. Mirembe never asked why she had to be the one. It was as clear as sunrise. She was the firstborn. She had always been bright in school, first in her Standard 7 class, praised by teachers who whispered, "That one, she could go far." But when the results came in and the acceptance letter to a prestigious girls' secondary school in Arusha arrived, Mama folded it with trembling hands. "We can't afford it, my child," she had said. "Besides, who will help with the little ones?" So Mirembe stayed. Now at 19, her university letter sat unopened at the bottom of Mama's kitenge-wrapped basket. It had arrived a month ago, addressed in blue ink, Mirembe Halima, Egerton University. But how could she go? Who would cook? Who would clean? Who would remember Achieng's medicine or Sauda's allergy to cassava? As the sun set, painting the clay walls of their home in gold, Mirembe fetched water with Baraka. He skipped stones across the stream while she stood still, staring at her reflection. She didn't hate them, but she was tired. So tired. That night, she lit a candle, pulled out the letter, and whispered, "One day. Just not today." The letter sat quietly under Mirembe's mattress, the edges curling from the damp heat. It had been there for weeks. Every night after the last dish was scrubbed and the little ones were asleep, Mirembe would lie down and feel it press against her back, like a truth she didn't want to face. Egerton University, Bachelor of Education. Reporting date, August 12th. It might as well have been a note from another life. The village girls who heard about it called her Professor. The elders asked if she'd become a teacher like old Mr. Karanja, who taught with a cane and a radio that never worked. But the ones who knew her better, like Mama Halima, barely mentioned it at all. "It's a good thing," Mama would say while stirring ugali. "But we have things here too. Your siblings. They need you." And they did. Achieng still wet the bed. Sauda had started losing focus in school. Baraka had begun roaming around with boys who smoked dried banana leaves behind the school pit latrine. Mirembe's absence would feel like a hole in a hut's roof. Everything would fall apart when it rained. One evening, as she pounded millet outside, a familiar face approached, the village teacher, Mr. Mugo, carrying his ever-worn satchel. "I heard you got in," he said, voice low so the neighbors wouldn't hear. "Why haven't you gone?" Mirembe wiped her hands on her skirt. "Who will take care of them?" He looked at her, then at her home, where laughter from the twins rang like bells. "That's not your only job, Mirembe." She didn't answer. Later that night, she pulled the envelope out again. She read every line slowly, whispering the words like scripture. At the bottom was a bold stamp, scholarship, partial funding awarded. Hope, but not enough. She folded it carefully and put it back. Tomorrow, she'd wake up before dawn, light the fire, and begin again. But somewhere deep in her chest, a door had cracked open. And behind it, the dream waited. It was a Tuesday when word spread that Doreen, the neighbor's daughter, had left for Dar es Salaam to start her nursing course. The entire village seemed to buzz with the news. Even Mama Halima paused while sorting beans to say, "Hey, Mama Doreen must be proud." Mirembe smiled and nodded, but her hands trembled slightly over the beans. Doreen was younger than her by a full year, but she had no siblings, just a father who fixed radios and a mother who sold soap from a wheelbarrow. They had saved and saved, selling a goat and borrowing from a cousin in Morogoro. Now Doreen was on a bus, headed for her future. Mirembe didn't envy her. Not exactly, but she did feel the burn of what-ifs, the ache of what could be's. That afternoon, as Mirembe walked to the well with the twins, she passed Doreen's mother hanging clothes. "Hey, Mirembe," the woman called. "You're still here? Thought you'd be leaving soon too?" "I'll go later," Mirembe replied, adjusting the yellow lesso tied over her hair. "When things settle." The woman gave her a long look. "Things never really settle, child. Sometimes you just have to go anyway." Mirembe nodded, but her feet felt heavier than before. The jerrycan dug into her shoulder like a reminder. At the well, she sat on the edge while the twins splashed each other. "Doreen is gone," Sauda said, wringing her skirt. "Will you go too?" Mirembe looked at her. The twins were 10, full of questions and untamed energy. Would they understand if she left? Would they forgive her? "I don't know," she said quietly. That night, she found Mama Halima mending Baraka's shorts. "Mama, if I go, who will help you?" Mama didn't look up. "If you don't go, who will help you?" It was the first time her mother had acknowledged it. The weight, the waiting, the reality that Mirembe was more than just the one who stayed. She went to bed with her heart full of questions, but also, for the first time, with permission. The cough started as a whisper, light, dry, and persistent. Mama Halima brushed it off, blaming the charcoal smoke or the changing weather. But within a week, it had turned into something deeper, more violent. At night, it echoed through their small house like footsteps in a silent room. Mirembe began boiling ginger and eucalyptus leaves, making Mama inhale the steam while the children watched silently. Baraka would squeeze her hand tightly each time Mama doubled over. Even Achieng stopped asking for bedtime stories. "We need to take her to a clinic," Mirembe said one morning, watching Mama struggle to rise from her mat. "With what money?" Mama croaked, her voice strained but still stubborn. "We can't even afford salt." Mirembe didn't argue. She simply put on her faded blue blouse and carried a small basket of tomatoes and onions to the market. All day she called out to passers-by, selling under the hot sun while thinking only of Mama's breath. By evening, her head ached and her throat was raw. She returned home with 4,300 shillings, barely enough for medicine. Still, it was something. The next morning, she walked 2 kilometers to the dispensary, got a bottle of cough syrup, and carried it home like a treasure. Mama smiled weakly when she saw it. "You do too much, Mirembe," she whispered. "You're only one person." Mirembe didn't reply. She just spooned the syrup into her mother's mouth. Later that night, while everyone slept, she sat outside beneath the stars. The village was quiet, except for the occasional barking dog and the soft chirping of crickets. She looked up, wondering if anyone ever felt this tired and this invisible at the same time. It wasn't the chores. It wasn't even the money. It was the way no one ever asked her how she was holding up. But she knew this. If anything happened to Mama, the family would fall apart. She couldn't let that happen. So she stood up, wiped her face, and whispered to the darkness, "Not yet. I'm still here." The market was alive with voices. Vendors shouting, chickens squawking, radios playing muffled taarab music. Mirembe moved among the noise like a shadow, her woven basket balanced on her hip, filled with cassava, dried fish, and small red tomatoes she hoped would sell. The market women knew her. They called her Mama Madogo, with affection, even though she was barely 19. To them, she was already a woman, responsible, quiet, reliable. She never stayed to chat or join gossip circles. Her eyes were always scanning for the best deals, her mind on home, her hands already working. But that day, something was different. As she passed by a stall, she caught her name. "She got into Egerton, you know?" one woman said, her voice too loud, too casual. "Still here, though," another replied. "What kind of girl turns down university?" "Maybe she likes playing mother." The words hit Mirembe like flying gravel, sharp and meant to sting. She pretended not to hear. She bargained for lentils, smiled politely at a butcher, and went on with her errands. But the whispers followed her, slinking behind like shadows. In a place where everyone knew your name, they also knew your business. And when they didn't, they made it up. Back home, she unpacked the groceries in silence. Mama noticed. "Did someone say something?" she asked gently. Mirembe shook her head. Nothing important. But that night, as she fetched water with Baraka, she asked, "If I go to university, would you miss me?" Baraka, who was 10 but carried the wisdom of someone twice his age, answered without pause. "Yes, but I want you to go anyway." "Why?" "Because you're always tired, and when you read your books, you smile." Mirembe didn't speak. She just knelt and hugged him tightly, letting the cold water splash her skirt. Maybe the market women had it wrong. Maybe leaving wasn't selfish. Maybe it was survival. The rain had just started when the phone rang. It wasn't their phone. Mirembe's family didn't own one. It was Mama Halima's friend, Mama Njeri, who shouted from the edge of the fence, "Mirembe, someone is calling for you." Mirembe wiped her hands on her skirt and ran barefoot across the muddy compound, her heart pounding. Calls were rare, and they usually meant bad news. She took the old Nokia from Mama Njeri's hand, pressed it to her ear, and whispered, "Hello?" A cheerful voice replied, "Is this Mirembe Halima?" "Yes. This is from Egerton University. We've reviewed your scholarship application. You've been approved for full funding." Mirembe stood frozen. The rain fell harder around her, but she didn't move. "Full funding?" "Yes. Tuition, accommodation, and meals. You just need to confirm your admission and report by next week." "Next week?" "Yes. Congratulations, Mirembe. You've earned this." The call ended. The sky seemed to pause. Even the rain softened for a moment. She stood under the drizzle, stunned. Her fingers trembled as she returned the phone to Mama Njeri. "What did they say?" the older woman asked. Mirembe smiled, her face wet with both rain and disbelief. "They said I can go." That evening, she told Mama first. They sat on the mat, legs tucked beneath them, steam rising from a pot of beans on the jiko. "They're giving me everything," she said. "I can go." Mama was quiet. Then she nodded slowly. "Then you must." "What about everyone here?" "We'll manage. You've given us more than we ever asked for. Now it's your turn." The twins clapped when they heard the news. Baraka danced around the compound. Even little Achieng tried to pack her sister's clothes in a bucket. That night, Mirembe didn't dream of chores or empty plates. She dreamed of classrooms, of pens gliding over paper, of a dorm room filled with quiet, with freedom. The burden hadn't left, but for the first time, someone else was helping carry it. And the path ahead didn't feel like a sacrifice. It felt like a beginning. The acceptance was official, but one final step remained, a required scholarship interview at the district office in Mwanza. It wasn't just formality. For many, it was the difference between going or staying. Mirembe had never left the village alone. The thought of navigating a town, of facing a panel in stiff chairs and English-only conversations, made her stomach churn. But she ironed her blouse the night before, wore the long navy skirt Aunt Rahema had given her years ago, and braided her hair neatly. Mama handed her 5,000 shillings, everything they had saved from selling a sack of dried maize. "There's enough for the boda and lunch," she said. "Be confident. You already belong." The ride into Mwanza was jarring. The roads were rough, and the sun beat down fiercely, but Mirembe kept rehearsing her answers in her head. "Why do you want to study? What will you do after university? Tell us about your background." The district office was a cream-colored building with faded paint and metal windows that rattled when the wind blew. Mirembe sat in a waiting room with 3 other candidates, each dressed in their best. One boy had polished shoes so shiny she could see her face in them. A girl wore a blazer far too big for her shoulders. When her name was called, her hands went cold. She stepped into the room, heart pounding, and faced 3 interviewers with tired eyes and clipboards. The questions came quickly. "What challenges have you faced?" "My father died when I was 9. I've been helping raise my siblings since then. I cook, clean, and work part-time in the market." "You're still here despite being accepted months ago. Why?" "I stayed because my family needed me, but I want to go. I want to teach girls like me." The room fell silent for a second. Then one of the women smiled softly and said, "Thank you." Back outside, the wind felt cooler, lighter. Mirembe had spoken her truth, not perfectly, but fully, and it was enough. She headed home with dust on her shoes, hope in her chest, and one thought rising above all else. She was ready. The house buzzed like a beehive the morning before Mirembe's departure. Achieng ran barefoot from one room to the next, holding up clothes and shouting, "Should this go in the bag?" Baraka was busy cleaning her only pair of black shoes with a rag and ash. The twins argued over whether to give her their hairbrush or the one mirror they all shared. Mama Halima sat on the edge of the bed, folding Mirembe's clothes with gentle precision. Her cough had weakened, but her hands still trembled slightly. Each item she packed felt like a prayer: a long skirt, a bar of soap, the purple headscarf Mirembe always wore on Sundays. They didn't have a suitcase, just a borrowed duffel bag from Mom and Jerry's nephew. It smelled faintly of mothballs and old shoes, but it would do. Inside, they packed carefully: 2 blouses, 1 sweater, a notebook, and a small bundle of coins sewn into a handkerchief. Mirembe felt both excitement and dread. She had waited for this moment for years, but now that it was here, her heart tugged in 2 directions, one toward freedom, the other toward home. She stepped outside to breathe and found Baraka sitting on a rock with something in his hands. "I made you this," he said, holding out a bracelet made of blue beads and string. "It's like the one Baba gave Mama." Mirembe took it slowly, eyes shining. "Thank you." "Don't forget us," he whispered. "I never could." That night, the family didn't sleep much. They sat around the fire, sharing memories, funny ones, quiet ones, moments stitched into their years. Mama Halima told the story of Mirembe's first day at school when she refused to go in without her baby brother strapped on her back. The twins giggled. Achieng dozed off in Mirembe's lap. Before bed, Mama pulled her aside. "This house will feel different without you," she said. "But that difference will be joy, not loss." And Mirembe believed her, because this time, leaving wasn't running away. It was stepping into who she was meant to become. The morning of her departure arrived cloaked in dew and quiet goodbyes. Mirembe wore her favorite blouse, the one with tiny flower prints near the collar, and the lesso Mama had given her wrapped neatly over her shoulders. Her duffel bag sat by the doorway, its handle fraying slightly, holding the few things she owned and many things she hoped for. The family gathered outside as the sky began to brighten. The twins were unusually quiet, their arms folded and eyes downcast. Baraka clutched Mirembe's hand tightly, as if letting go would make her disappear. Mama's cough had lessened, but her voice was hoarse as she whispered blessings over her daughter. A boda boda arrived, its engine buzzing like an impatient bee. The rider, a cousin of Mama Halima, helped tie Mirembe's duffel bag to the back. Mirembe hugged each sibling tightly. "You have to help Mama now, okay?" she told them. "You're all grown up." Achieng, the youngest, nodded solemnly. "I'll fetch the water," she said. When she hugged Mama, the older woman didn't let go right away. "You've done more than your share, my child," she murmured. "Now go learn. Become." The ride to the bus stage was filled with silence, wind, and the blur of trees. At the station, Mirembe boarded the bus with trembling legs. She found a window seat and clutched the charm Baraka had made. As the bus pulled away, she watched the village disappear. Brown rooftops, green fields, and the dusty road that had shaped her resilience. With every mile, the burden lifted just a little. Not because it was gone, but because she was finally letting herself put it down. Mirembe didn't know what awaited her at Egerton, but she knew this. She was not just her family's keeper. She was her own person, and her story was finally hers to write. Egerton University sat on a hill that overlooked endless fields and distant towns. It was larger than any place Mirembe had ever seen. The buildings were tall and made of stone, the pathways lined with trees, and the air smelled of paper, sun, and possibility. Mirembe arrived with her small duffel bag, a handwritten letter from the scholarship board, and wide eyes. She followed a map drawn by another village girl who had attended years ago, carefully locating the admissions office, then the hostel where she would stay. Her room was small but neat, with 2 beds and a window that overlooked the main gate. Her roommate, a bubbly girl named Naliaka from Bungoma, welcomed her with open arms. "I was the firstborn too," she said, grinning. "Let me guess, you almost didn't come?" Mirembe laughed. Exactly that. They spent the evening unpacking, sharing stories about home, and planning how to navigate campus. For once, Mirembe didn't have to be the one holding everyone else together. She could simply exist, learn, and breathe. The next morning, dressed in her best blouse and skirt, she joined hundreds of other students for her first lecture. The hall echoed with footsteps, laughter, and chairs scraping the floor. Mirembe found a seat in the middle row, notebook open, pen steady in hand. The lecturer walked in, a woman with glasses and a voice that commanded attention. "You are not here by accident," she said. "You are here because you fought to be." Mirembe sat a little straighter. As the lesson began, she scribbled notes quickly, hungry for every word. And for the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about whether Achieng had eaten or whether Mama's cough had returned. She was present. Fully. Finally. After class, she sat under a jacaranda tree and pulled out the bracelet Baraka had made. She ran her fingers over each bead, smiling softly. She still carried her family in her heart. But now, she carried herself too. Mirembe, the girl with the burden, had become Mirembe, the woman with a future, and her story was just beginning. Stories connect us to our past, shape our present, and guide our future. African Legends and Stories is more than just storytelling. It is a bridge between yesterday and tomorrow, between tradition and modernity. Subscribe now and be part of this journey. Like, comment, and share to keep these legends alive. This is African Legends and Stories, where the past speaks and the future listens.